فلما رأى قميصه قد من دبر قال إنه من كيدكن إن كيدكن عظيم.
So when the husband saw Joseph's shirt torn from behind, he exclaimed, "Surely this is one of the tricks of you women. Your tricks are indeed great."
يوسف أعرض عن هذا واستغفري لذنبك إنك كنت من الخاطئين.
Joseph, peace be upon him, disregard this, and you, woman, ask forgiveness for your sin, for indeed it is you who has been at fault.
وقال نسوة في المدينة امرأة العزيز تراود فتاها عن نفسه قد شغفها حبا إنا لنراها في ضلال مبين.
And some ladies in the city began to say, "The chief's wife, violently in love with her houseboy, is out to tempt him. We think she is clearly mistaken." The chief's wife, Aziz was not his name. It was also not the title of any office, but was used for a person holding a position of high authority in Egypt.
فلما سمعت بمكرهن أرسلت إليهن وأعتدت لهن متكأ وآتت كل واحدة منهن سكينا وقالت اخرج عليهن فلما رأينه أكبرنه وقطعن أيديهن وقلن حاش لله ما هذا بشرا إن هذا إلا ملك كريم.
Hearing of their sly talk, the chief's wife sent for those ladies and arranged for them a banquet and got ready couches and gave each guest a knife. Then, while they were cutting and eating the fruit, she signaled Joseph, peace be upon him, "Come out to them." When the ladies saw him, they were so struck with admiration that they cut their hands, exclaiming, "Allah preserve us! This is no mortal human. This is nothing but a noble angel."
26. The ancient Egyptians used to place pillows and cushions in such feasts for the guests to recline. And this is confirmed by the archaeological remains in Egypt. There is no mention at all of this banquet in the Bible, but it has been described in the Talmud in a way quite different from that of the Quran. Needless to say that while this narrative in the Quran is natural, lifelike and teaches moral lessons, the one in the Talmud lacks all these things.
قالت فذلكن الذي لمتنني فيه ولقد راودته عن نفسه فاستعصم ولئن لم يفعل ما آمره ليسجنن وليكون من الصاغرين.
She said, "So now you see, this is the one regarding whom you reproached me. Indeed, I tried to tempt him to myself, but he held back. Although if he were not to follow my order, he would have certainly been imprisoned and humiliated."
27. This open demonstration of her love and declaration of her immoral designs show that the moral condition of the higher class of the Egyptian society had declined to the lowest ebb. It is quite obvious that the women whom she had invited must have been ladies belonging to the uppermost stratum of the society. The very fact that she presented her beloved before them without any hesitation, in order to convince them of his beauty and youth that had urged her to fall in love with him, shows that there was nothing uncommon in this demonstration. Then these ladies did not reproach her but themselves practically demonstrated that, in those circumstances, they themselves would have done the same that she did. Above all, the hostess did not feel that it was immodest to declare openly, "No doubt, I sought to seduce him and he succeeded in escaping from me. Yet I am not going to give him up. If he will not do as I bid him, he shall be cast into prison and humbled and disgraced."
قال رب السجن أحب إلي مما يدعونني إليه وإلا تصرف عني كيدهن أصب إليهن وأكن من الجاهلين.
Joseph, peace be upon him, said, "My Lord, I prefer imprisonment to what they ask me to do. And if you do not avert from me the guile of these women, I will succumb to their attraction and lapse into ignorance."
28. In order to grasp the full significance of this prayer of Prophet Joseph, we should try to form a mental picture of the circumstances in which he was placed at that time. In the light of this passage, the picture will be something like this. There is the handsome young man of 20 in the prime of his life, who has brought health and vigor of youth from the desert into Egypt, after passing through the ordeal of forced slavery and exile. Fortune has placed him in the house of one of the highest dignitaries in the capital of the most civilized country of the world at the time. There this handsome young man meets in the prime of life with a strange experience. The lady of the house in which he has to live day and night falls passionately in love with him and begins to tempt and seduce him. Then the fame of his beauty spreads all over the capital and the other ladies of the town also become enamored of him. Now this is the critical position. He is surrounded on all sides by hundreds of beautiful snares that have been spread to entrap and catch him unaware. All sorts of devices are employed to excite his passions and entice him. Wherever he goes he encounters sin lying in ambush with all its charms and allurements and waiting for an opportune moment to make a surprise attack upon him. Such are the circumstances that are tempting him with sin, but the pious young man successfully passes through the ordeal, set for him by Satan, with the self-control that is praiseworthy indeed. But it is all the more praiseworthy that he does not feel any pride for showing such extraordinary piety in such trying and tempting circumstances. On the other hand, he very humbly invokes his Lord to protect him from those traps of sin, for he is afraid of the common human weaknesses and cries out, "My Lord, I am weak. I fear lest these temptations should overpower me. I would rather prefer imprisonment to doing such an evil thing into which they are tempting to ensnare me." In fact, that was the most important and critical period of Prophet Joseph's training, and this hard ordeal helped to bring forth all his latent virtues of which he himself was unaware up to that time. Then he himself realized that Allah had endowed him with the high and extraordinary qualities of honesty, fidelity, piety, charity, righteousness, self-control, balance of mind, and he made full use of these when he gained power in Egypt.
فاستجاب له ربه فصرف عنه كيدهن إنه هو السميع العليم.
Thereupon his Lord granted his prayer and averted their guile from him. Surely, he alone is all-hearing, all-knowing.
29. Allah warded off their guile from Prophet Joseph by strengthening his character in such a way as to make ineffective all their devices to ensnare him. This also implies that Allah opened the door of prison for him in order to keep him safe from their tricks and temptations.
ثم بدا لهم من بعد ما رأوا الآيات ليسجننه حتى حين.
Then it occurred to them to cast Joseph, peace be upon him, into prison for a while, even though they had seen clear signs of Joseph's innocence and of the evil ways of their ladies.
30. It occurred to them to imprison Prophet Joseph in order to save face after they had seen clear proofs of his innocence and of the guilt of their own women, for no other alternative was left, in their opinion, to undo the scandal that was spreading fast in the land. But it did not occur to them that in fact his imprisonment was his moral victory and the moral defeat of the rulers and the dignitaries of Egypt. By that time, Prophet Joseph had not remained an unknown person, for all and sundry had heard stories of his beauty and piety, and of the love the ladies had shown towards him. Therefore, when those wise courtiers put into practice their plausible device to imprison him in order to reverse the doings of their ladies, the common people must have drawn their own conclusions, for they knew Prophet Joseph to be a man of pure, strong and high character. So it was obvious to them that he had committed no crime to merit imprisonment, and that he had been imprisoned because it was an easier way of escape for the chiefs of Egypt than to keep their own ladies under control. Incidentally, this shows that imprisonment of innocent people without trial and due procedure of law is as old as civilization itself. The dishonest rulers of today are not much different from the wicked rulers who governed Egypt some 4,000 years ago. The only difference between the two is that they did not imprison people in the name and for the cause of democracy, but the very humbly invokes his Lord to protect him from those traps of sin, for he is without any pretext of law. On the contrary, their modern descendants make use of the specious pretenses of honesty when they are acting unjustly. They first enact the necessary unlawful laws to justify their unlawful practices and then lawfully imprison their victims. That is to say, the Egyptian rulers were honest in their dishonesty and did not hide the fact that they were imprisoning people to safeguard their own interests, and not those of the community. But these modern disciples of Satan cast innocent people into prison to ward off the danger they feel from them, but proclaim to the world that their victims are a menace to the country and the community. In short, they were mere tyrants, but these are shameless liars as well.
ودخل معه السجن فتيان قال أحدهما إني أراني أعصر خمرا وقال الآخر إني أراني أحمل فوق رأسي خبزا تأكل الطير منه نبئنا بتأويله إنا نراك من المحسنين.
And with Joseph, peace be upon him, 2 other slaves entered the prison. One of them said, I saw myself pressing wine in a dream. And the other said, I saw myself carrying bread on my head, of which the birds were eating. Both said, Tell us, what is its interpretation? For we consider you to be one of those who do good.
31. At the time when Prophet Joseph was sent to prison, he probably was about 20 years old. This has been inferred from 2 statements in the Quran and the Talmud. The Quran, ayat 42, says that he remained in the prison for a decade or so, and the Talmud says that Joseph was 30 years old when he was elevated to his honorable and trustworthy position. 32. One of the 2 prisoners, according to the Bible, was the chief of the butlers of the king of Egypt, and the other the chief of the bakers. And according to the Talmud, they were condemned to the prison because during a feast stone grits were found in the bread and a fly in the wine. 33. The fact that 2 prisoners attested his righteousness shows that Prophet Joseph was held in high esteem in the prison. Otherwise there was no reason why the 2 should have requested him alone to interpret the dreams and paid their homage like this. We have seen that you are a righteous man. It clearly means that the events narrated in the preceding verses had reached all and sundry, and the people, inside the prison and outside it, knew that he had not been guilty of any crime or sin. On the other hand, he had proved himself to be a noble soul who had come out successful in the hardest test of his piety. So much so that there was not the like of him in piety, not even among their own religious leaders in the whole country. That is why not only the prisoners but also the officers and officials of the prison looked upon him as an honorable man and had full confidence in him. The Bible confirms this. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison, and whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. The keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand. Gen. 39, 22-23.
قال لا يأتيكما طعام ترزقانه إلا نبأتكما بتأويله قبل أن يأتيكما ذلكما مما علمني ربي إني تركت ملة قوم لا يؤمنون بالله وهم بالآخرة هم كافرون.
Joseph, peace be upon him, said, I will inform you about the interpretation of the dreams before the arrival of the food that is sent to you. This knowledge is part of what I have been taught by my Lord. I have renounced the way of those who do not believe in Allah and who deny the hereafter.
وَاتَّبَعْتُ مِلَّةَ آبَائِي إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَإِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ مَا كَانَ لَنَا أَن نُّشْرِكَ بِاللَّهِ مِن شَيْءٍ ذَلِكَ مِن فَضْلِ اللَّهِ عَلَيْنَا وَعَلَى النَّاسِ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَشْكُرُونَ.
And I have adopted the way of my forefathers, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Peace be upon them. It is not for us to associate any with Allah in His divinity. It is out of Allah's grace upon us and upon mankind that He did not require of us to serve any other than Allah, and yet most people do not give thanks.
يا صاحبي السجن أأرباب متفرقون خير أم الله الواحد القهار.
Fellow prisoners, is it better that there be diverse lords, or just Allah, the One, the Irresistible?
ما تعبدون من دونه إلا أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان إن الحكم إلا لله أمر ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه ذلك الدين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون.
Those whom you serve beside Him are merely idle names that you and your fathers have fabricated, without Allah sending down any sanction for them. All authority to govern rests only with Allah. He has commanded that you serve none but Him. This is the right way of life, though most people are altogether unaware.
يا صاحبي السجن أما أحدكما فيسقي ربه خمرا وأما الآخر فيصلب فتأكل الطير من رأسه قضي الأمر الذي فيه تستفتيان.
Fellow prisoners, this is the interpretation of your dreams. One of you will serve wine to his lord, the king of Egypt. As for the other, he will be crucified, and birds will eat of his head. The question concerning what you asked has thus been decided.
34. This discourse, which is the soul of this story, and is one of the best on the doctrine of Tawheed in the Quran itself, finds no place at all in the Bible and the Talmud. This is because they regard him merely as a wise and pious man and not as a prophet. That is why Rev. Rodwell has, in regard to this passage, accused Muhammad, peace be upon him, of putting his own doctrine and conviction into the mouth of Joseph, peace be upon him. But the Quran not only puts forward and presents these two aspects of his life in a much better and clearer way, but also presents him as a prophet, who had started propagating the message even in the prison. As this discourse suggests several very important things, it will be worthwhile to consider these one by one. 1. This is the first occasion on which Prophet Joseph appears to have begun the preaching of the true faith. For before this, the Quran reveals him in the different stages of his life as a man of high morality, but does not say anything to show that he conveyed the message also. From this it is clear that those stages were of a preparatory nature and the mission of prophethood was entrusted to him at the stage of his imprisonment, and this was his first discourse as a prophet. 2. Moreover, this was the first occasion when he revealed his identity to others. Before this, we find him bearing patiently everything that happened to him without revealing anything about his relationships with Prophet Abraham and others. He kept silent when the caravan made him a slave and carried him to Egypt, when Al-Aziz bought him, and when he was sent to prison. As Prophet Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, peace be upon them all, were quite well known, he might have used their names to his advantage. The members of the caravan, both the Ishmaelites and the Midianites, were closely related to his family, and the Egyptians were, at least, familiar with the name of Prophet Abraham. Nay, the way in which Prophet Joseph mentioned their names in this discourse, shows that the fame of his father, grandfather and great-grandfather had reached Egypt. But in spite of this, Prophet Joseph did not use their names on any of the critical occasions to save himself from the plight in which he was placed. This shows that probably he himself knew that these things were inevitable for his training for the mission for which Allah had chosen him. Now it was absolutely necessary for him, for the sake of his mission, to reveal this fact in order to show that he was not presenting any new faith but the same faith that was preached by prophets Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, peace be upon them all. This was necessary because the message demanded that it should not be presented with the claim that it was a new and novel thing, but that it was the same universal and eternal truth that has always been presented by its bearers. 3. This teaches us that one can, like Prophet Joseph, carve out a way for the propagation of the message, if one has the intention and the required wisdom. The two men pay their homage to him and request him to interpret their dreams. In answer to this he says, I will tell their interpretations, but let me first inform you about the source of my knowledge that enables me to understand dreams. Thus he takes advantage of their request and preaches his own faith to them. We learn from this that if a person is imbued with the true and strong desire for propagating the truth, he can very gracefully turn the direction of the conversation towards the message he desires to convey. On the contrary, if a person has no strong desire for the propagation of the message, he never finds any opportunity for it, even though 101 such opportunities might have come his way which could have been utilized for this purpose. But one must be on his guard to discriminate between the right use of an opportunity by a wise man from the crude propagation of a foolish and uncultured person, who tries to thrust the message into the ears of unwilling hearers and succeeds only in creating aversion for it in their minds because of his crude way of presentation. 4. This also teaches the right procedure that should be followed in presenting the message. Prophet Joseph does not present, at the very start, the details of the creed and regulations of the faith, but the most fundamental thing that distinguishes a believer from a non-believer, that is, the distinction between Tawheed and Shirk. Then he presents it in such a rational manner as cannot fail to convince any man of common sense. And his argument must have impressed deeply on the minds of the two slaves. Which is better, various gods or one omnipotent Allah? They knew it from their personal experience that it was much better to serve one master than a number of them. Therefore it was far better to serve the Lord of the universe than his servants. Moreover, he does not invite them, directly to accept his faith and discard their own faith, but he very wisely draws their attention to this fact. This is Allah's bounty upon us and upon all mankind, that he has not made us the servants of any other than himself, yet most of the people are not grateful to him. Instead of serving him alone, they invent gods for themselves and worship them. Then it is also noteworthy that his criterion of the faith of his addressees is based on wisdom and has no tinge of bitterness in it. He says, "The gods whom you call, the god of wealth or the god of health or the god of prosperity or the god of rain, etc., are mere names you have given them without any reality behind them. The real owner of everything is the Supreme Allah, whom you also acknowledge as the Creator and the Lord of the whole universe. He has sent no authority and given no sanction to anyone for Godhead and worship, but has reserved all the powers, all the rights and all the authorities for himself, and commanded, 'Serve and worship none but me.'" 5. It may also be inferred from this discourse that Prophet Joseph must have made full use of this opportunity of a decade for the propagation of the message. Some people think that that was the only time when he extended the invitation to the message. This is wrong for two reasons. First, it is absurd to imagine that a prophet could have been neglectful of his mission for a long period. Second, it cannot be imagined that the person who availed himself of the opportunity when two men approached him for the interpretation of their dreams, could ever have passed a decade of imprisonment without propagating the message entrusted to him by his Lord.